Jeff Williams is a drummer, composer, and educator born in Mount Vernon, Ohio, who started playing the drums at age 7, later going on to study at the Berklee School of Music. Over his long career, he's performed with jazz legends like Lee Konitz, Stan Getz, Dave Liebman, and Richie Beirach. He's also led his own groups, including Circadian Rhythms, and been part of the trio Interplay. Williams is taught at the Royal Academy of Music and also Birmingham Conservatory, and we're looking forward to catching up with him today. So, Jeff, good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for asking me. Glad to be here.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
We were just talking before we started recording how you've been kind of all over the place, but now you're in New York, right?
At the moment, yeah. Um, I go back and forth between Lisbon, Portugal, and Brooklyn, New York.
So
So
you're living in two different worlds. How's the scene in Portugal?
it's pretty healthy. I mean, it's not obviously as large a scene as New York, but um, it's good. You know, there was a jazz club in Lisbon called the Hot Club, and that was a 7 night a week jazz club, a real jazz club, the only one really in Portugal. And it turned out they did some sort of building inspection and realized that it was about to collapse. So I played there a number of times. It was great, but they're looking for a new home now. So basically, what's happening is that the musicians, as they always do, have formed the collectives and put on concerts uh, in different venues that they
You
can
grew up in, playing in the
find.
jazz
And
capital of the world. When you go to
but
when you're
it's
in
a healthy scene.
Okay, got it. When when you're coming from New York going to Portugal, do the musicians, put you on a pedestal in a sense, or they're kind of like, oh, we have our own thing here and he's in New York. Are there any type of uh,
I think, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I'm sort of an elder statesman now, and you know, uh, have I received the benefit of a certain amount of respect because of my long career. And but I mean, it's interesting. One of the great things is that um, when you play this music, you're kind of ageless because in the moment anybody can be right. You know, anyone can offer up an idea musically that is as good as anything I could come up with, even if they're only in their 20s or what have you. So one of the great things is being able to play with young musicians who are, I guess, grateful that I'm playing with them, but I'm equally grateful to play with them because
you, you say you use the word
it makes me feel
ageless.
young.
You use the word
Yeah.
ageless. I feel ageless too in a sense. Like I've always just felt like that 18-year-old kid playing guitar. I don't know if you have this going on or not, but when you watch certain shows, I'm in my late 30s. When I watch Seinfeld now, even though they were younger than me, I'm like I feel like they're older than me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, a part of us, I think, is uh, kind of childlike, let's say. Um, and that's another thing about playing, I suppose, any kind of music, but particularly jazz, um, because it's infinite. There's always more to learn, and there's always the chance to not repeat yourself. To find something new in the moment. So that kind of that feeling of discovery is has kind of remained constant for me since I started playing, since I first heard this music.
Did you have older musicians who, at the time when you were younger, they maybe weren't the nicest or encouraging? Because the way you talk about playing with the younger musicians and you feel ageless, it's like you don't feel like you're above them or anything. We're all just in this.
No, no, I don't. I mean, in my own bands, which in living in London for almost 20 years. And even before moving there, having different bands, everyone, you know, I used to be the youngest person in the band. Now I'm the oldest, particularly in my own band. You know, I carefully chose people that I felt comfortable with as people and musicians, and people I thought that would get along with each other, and they did. And so I'm really, all I ever really wanted to do was be in a band, you know, and that's hard. It's hard to keep a band going these days. And so I've tried to do that at different times. And the feeling is that we're all in this together. And I'm not the boss, you know, I get that, you know, we play my music, and in that sense, it's a little selfish, but I don't tell them how to play it.
I was just going to ask you that. You let them, you don't say anything. That's why you hired them.
Are you okay? Yeah, we're having some latency here.
1 sec, let me just make sure everything's okay.
I don't know if it's at my end or
I think we're okay now. Yeah. I have 5G, and for some reason it doesn't automatically connect to 5G, but we're good. Yeah, sorry, go on. What were you saying?
um, just that, you know, as we were saying, uh, there's no hierarchy. And you know, this has been said often, but jazz is probably the most democratic pursuit you could find, other than maybe, you know, certain sports are like that too, team sports, where everyone has a role to play. And but I think in this music, it's even more democratic in the sense that, as I said before, anyone can take the ball and run with it.
Have you always
And
been that way? Like, or is it something like that just developed, like, the more you were doing it? Like when you were younger, were you thinking this way too? Like had this,
I think
level of
it
awareness?
I think it appealed to me. That was one of the things that appealed to me about the music. And you know, I should add that growing up, my mother really wanted to pursue a professional jazz singing career.
Mhm.
And so my parents separated when I was 9, and she moved to New York. I was growing up in Ohio. And so I would go there and visit her during summer and school vacations. And she got to know pretty much everyone in the jazz community, and was well liked. She recorded. And so I already knew that, you know, I was already playing the drums, and I had found from the records that my parents bought the things that I like Miles Davis, Hamid Jamal. So I was playing along with those things, and I was learning how to play from watching the masters play in New York, you know. Um, and as I observed them, and it was just such a great period in the 60s. Um,
I'm so jealous.
it was incredible. And the feeling among the musicians in terms of community, and I just thought, wow, these are the greatest people in the world. I want to be like them.
You felt
And
like personally, not just musically.
yeah, how the way they carried themselves, the way they treated each other, um, the style that they had, the way they excuse me 1 second,
No, it's okay.
my wife is leaving. Take your cane.
I don't need it. I'm just gonna lose it.
You're gonna lose it, okay. Um, Yeah. So we would go, my mother liked to go to Jim and Andy's, which was a bar restaurant where the musicians would go in, they could cash their checks. There was a recording studio upstairs. This is before answering machines or anything like that. So they would get their messages there, and pretty much anyone you can think of might be there. And she liked to go there kind of late at night and have dinner. And we would sit in the booth and the musicians would come over and talk to us. So I remember Coleman Hawkins was there one night, and he came over to the table and got to talking to my mother. And I think she said, well, you know, my son wants to be a professional drummer. And he looks at me and says, well, he better love it. Now, I didn't know what he meant. I mean, I knew it was kind of a hard life and an insecure existence financially, probably. But I didn't realize that doing this, playing this, being able to have the privilege of playing this music is its own reward.
You're right.
You know? Yeah. And so you're asking me about whether people were harsh with me or so I tell you, I've told this story before, but going forward, I was about 12 then. Coleman Hawkins talked to me. I'm 15, and I've been in New York a lot, and but at the same time, back in Ohio, I've started working with musicians in their 40s, playing jazz, and every weekend. So I'm making like $100 a week, Friday and Saturday, playing, just swinging, just playing standards and no solos.
Even today, if you're making $100 a week just swinging, you're kind of lucky, right? Isn't that great?
But imagine, yeah, right. The gigs still pay the same today, right? More or less. So I'm getting pretty good, and so now I'm 15. I'm in New York. We go to a club, the Embers West, I think it was, and Clark Terry's playing there, and my mother and Clark are good friends. He played on her record and has been watching me grow up. He's a very nice man, And she says, "Hey, Clark, you should hear my son play drums." He goes, "Okay, well, we'll bring him up." So he brings me up. Now this is different. This is
Were you scared that she did that, or you're like, I'm excited?
the thing about me was I would put myself in situations that were above my capabilities just to get the experience. Just I was so hungry to play. I would sit in at the drop of a hat. But this is early on, so I hadn't ever done that. So I get up there. What do you want to play? Okay, well, so let's play a blues. Okay, playing a blues, and we get to the trading. We're gonna trade with each other, right? And so I'm thinking this is jazz, right? I mean, he plays 4 bars, and I'm thinking, well, I'll just take 8. I'll just extend it. No, that's not really how it's done. First of all, that messes up the order because it's a 12-bar blues, right? So you can divide it by 4, but once you've taken 8, it screws up the cycle, right? So I'm not thinking about that. We get back to the table. My mother's all smiling and happy. Clark comes up behind me, puts his hands on my shoulders, and starts to squeeze. And he's squeezing harder and harder to the point where I know something's wrong, but I don't want to let on. And maybe this is weird, and it hurts. It's really starting to hurt a lot. I'm not sure what to do. And at the point when I feel like I'm going to have to get away from him, he whispers in my ear, when I give you 4, you take 4. So you never forget that, right? That's a lesson learned. And so the older guys would teach you that way.
You know what? I mean, like that's not, that's tough love, but it's not too tough. You know what I
It's
mean?
not too tough. No, it's not too tough.
I mean,
Uh,
I was at a jam session once and the guy told me, this guy came up to me like who was leading the session. I was like maybe 19 or 20. And he just started embarrassing me, like humiliating me in a big club. And, about something like that had nothing to do with the music whatsoever. And I said, listen, and I had some chutzpah and I was like, I don't know you. Please just get away from me.
right.
I'm like,
Well,
I don't
fair
bother.
enough.
I mean,
Yeah.
I said, I'm not bothering you. Like, just, I'm like, get away from me. I don't come, please just go away.
Right.
And he just said, you're never going to work again. Who do you think you are? I'm like, and I just
Yeah.
like,
Well, yeah.
he was mean.
I find that the better the musician is, the nicer the person is. Nicer, has humility, or really wants to share and help. Like, you might want to try this, or you sound good, but maybe work on your time or something, right?
Yeah.
But not. One time I was sitting in at Smalls, which is world famous by now.
In someone's
Jam
band or like
session.
in the session.
Yeah, the jam session.
Yeah.
And I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I just went up and started playing. And I accompanied the bass player on during his solo, perhaps adding a little commentary, a little back and forth with him. And then we finished, and he was really not happy. He said, 2 people can't solo at the same time.
Uh, yeah. I don't know. What are we doing? We're improvising together. What did you say?